Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome this morning at the Diplomatic Academy for a special occasion. We have the chance to discuss a very topical issue, and we have a very special guest for doing this with us. Please welcome warmly Fuad Hussein, the Foreign Minister of the Republic of Iraq. I don't think that I have to introduce Fuad Hussein. He's been for a long time active in Iraq politics, partly inside Iraq and in former times also outside, working for Kurdish organizations, student organizations, but also then working for the Kurdish regional government for a long time, before becoming Minister of Finance and now Minister of Foreign Affairs and Deputy Prime Minister. Fuad Hussein has been a speaker here about 2.5 years ago at this place. Yes. And we discussed at that time the importance of forming a government in Iraq, which at that time was still pending. They succeeded. There is a government. The stabilization of Iraq obviously went well. And Iraq played an important role, that was also a discussion point at that time, in the negotiation between Iran and Saudi Arabia for regional security in the region. In the meantime, things have changed. The war against Hamas in Israel and the Palestine territories has changed the situation. But still, Iraq plays an essential role because it looks as if the conflict may possibly escalate. In the last few days, there have been attacks on Erbil less than a week ago on the residential buildings in Erbil by Iran-backed militias, Shiite militias. And just this Saturday, there was an attack on the Al-Assad US airbase in Iraq. But this is only one of the few things that's happening at the moment in the given situation. And Minister Hussein accepted to speak about the Middle East in 2024. The Middle East is a large territory, and the minister said he is willing to speak about challenges and opportunities of the given situation, which is, when we talk about security, maybe even the more important thing, to talk about the opportunities that we have in this situation, to make sure that this doesn't become an escalating situation in the Middle East in 2024. So, Minister Hussein, the floor is yours.
I think I must. Oh,
you must just turn on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now is it good? Yes. Good morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. It is really my pleasure to be here again and to be with you and to exchange views about the situation in Iraq and in the entire of Middle East. I would like to start first with what's going on in Iraq, and then I will touch upon some topics, some issues which has to do with wider Middle East. And then we can have the chance to exchange views and to raise some questions, and I will try to be at your service and to answer some questions if I can. And thank you very much for being here. Few weeks ago, we had local election in Iraq. So local election, that means we are going to have a new local government. In the process of establishing democracy, we were facing many challenges. Democracy is new in Iraq. we didn't have democratic system, neither democratic culture. So we are trying since 2003 and exactly since 2005 when we voted for a new constitution. Iraqi constitution can be considered one of the best constitutions in Middle East. It is based on having freedom, establishing democracy, respecting human rights, respecting the rights of the components within the Iraqi society, fighting for peace, keeping peace internally, externally. Iraq suffered for a long time from internal fightings and external wars. In fact, if I will be fair with other people, we were for 50 years in fight with ourselves and in war with others. I'm talking, we were in war with others, because these are facts. We attacked Iran. In 1980, the war started, and it took 8 years. And it was the Iraqi government which occupied Kuwait. And as a result, of course, there were other wars. So wars was giving birth to other wars. And this is a book which has been written by a famous writer in Iraq. And this destroyed the infrastructure, destroyed not only the economic infrastructure, but also the values, so the culture infrastructure. And of course, I'm not talking about health infrastructure, education infrastructure. All has been destroyed through all these wars, one after another. And when I'm talking about internal wars or internal fight, the regime was fighting the Kurds. The regime was fighting the Shias. The regime was killing the Sunnis. So this was a policy in Iraq. At the end, in 2005, when we voted for this new constitution, the process of election started, democracy started. If we go back, Your Excellency, to the modern history of Iraq, and modern history of Iraq started from establishing the state of Iraq in 1920, exactly in 1921. And we see that all leaders except Faisal the first, he passed away in Switzerland, all leaders has been killed. All of them has been killed. The other day when the Holy Pope visited Iraq, and there was an event in Baghdad, and I saw 6 prime ministers or former prime ministers sitting next to each other, and I was there. At that time I was thinking, this is new in our culture. 6 prime ministers, former prime ministers, they are in life, and they are sitting there, and they respect each other. So I thought, there is a hope. We are learning. We are learning how to choose our leader, but also we are learning how to leave the position when you are losing the election. So the elections, a few weeks ago, for local election is once again a big step towards establishing democracy in Iraq. Establishing democracy in Iraq is a fight, but it's a different fight. Establishing democracy in Iraq, you need time. We need also to educate people about how to deal with democracy, how to deal with freedom, how to deal with human rights, how to deal with women's rights. Women nowadays are playing an important role in our society, in the leadership of the country, in the parliament. So this is also new for our culture, for Middle East culture. So the process, the path of building democracy is continuing. Having said that, that doesn't mean we doesn't have ups and downs and we doesn't have problems. We have got huge problems. One of the problems that we have has to do with corruption. The Iraqi economy, and I was Minister of Finance, when I studied how to fight corruption, I found out there are some bases which can lead to have corruption and to make it difficult to fight it. Iraqi economy is, until now, for high degree, is depending on cash economy. So we don't have digital economy, digital system, not yet. So cash is coming in, cash is going out, cash is in the market, cash is with the ministries, cash is with the private sector. Dealing with cash all the time, it creates problem because you cannot control it. So one of the steps when I started, when I was minister, was to have a kind of e-government, e-system. And we started, and we are progressing. The other reason for the corruption has to do with various political parties, or many political parties. And as a result, we don't have one center. We have got many centers of power. I'm not talking about constitutional center. So constitutional center, you have got the government, you have got the parliament, and you have got the executive branch, but we have got many political parties as center of power. Gradually, I am sure this will disappear. In the process of building economy, these centers will be part of the system, general system. They will not be part of far away from system. The other is also the reason for having various centers. Some groups, armed groups, and they are not following the instructions of the government, or they are acting far away from the policy of the government. So we are trying gradually also to include this, or at the end, to have one policy as for security and for military. Challenges that we have is also this climate change. Climate change is one of the main challenges that we are facing. I was just had with a meeting I had this morning with Grossi, Director Grossi, and we talked about healthcare and how they can help us, especially fighting cancer. In fact, cancer is one of the main challenges in some areas, especially in Basra and other areas. And when we study that, it has to do with the wars. Almost all the wars which has been waged against Iraq, it went through Basra. And also it has to do with flare gas, because we used to burn our gas, and gas affects the healthcare. So climate change and wars affected even the healthcare system, the healthcare situation of the society. So climate change, as in many other countries, but in Iraq more, is one of the challenges that we are facing. Security, we used to it, and gradually we are controlling the security situation. But the opportunities. In Iraq, you will have big, large, great opportunities. If you are a businessman, you can, because of the fact that the infrastructure has been destroyed for many reasons, including these wars and fightings, the economic infrastructure. So private sector, investors, foreign companies, Iraqi private sectors, Iraqi investors, they've got chance to invest in rebuilding or building the infrastructure in all fields, healthcare, education, economy, construction, everywhere. So we have got people has got huge opportunities to be partner in building, rebuilding this infrastructure and building the economy. Of course, I mentioned also the opportunity to build democracy, and it is not easy to build democracy in Middle East. You see, the political environment in Middle East is not used to democratic system. Sometimes we are comparing the situation in Iraq with Eastern European countries, because they had also one-party system, one ideology, and the system collapsed, and they started to build a liberal or a democratic system. But the atmosphere was different. They started to be part of the European Union. So the experience of European Union and democracy in European Union has easily transferred to their society. But in Iraq, our neighboring countries or our area is far away from this democratic culture. Having said that, Iraq started to build its own democracy. So this is also an opportunity. The other opportunity, Iraq was isolated from outside world. Iraq was totally isolated from outside world. But we are now part of the international community, and we are playing an important role, in fact, in the area to solve many problems. Your Excellency, you mentioned first tension between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Indeed, it was the Iraqi government played the important role to bring the Saudis and the Iranian together. They had 5 rounds of talks in Baghdad. And after 5 rounds of talks in Baghdad, they signed the agreement in China. Okay, I understand why. At that time, I had discussion with my colleagues, both ministers. I understand why they went there, but we did it. Even for a while, the tension between Washington and Tehran, we were going between talking about that. Now, of course, not anymore. So the opportunities that exist also on political level in Iraq is huge. Iraq is an open society now. So I wanted to just to focus on these issues, challenges and opportunities that we had and we have in Iraq. I would like for a few minutes, if you allow me, Your Excellency, to mention the problem in the area. The area is under fire. The area is under threat. The war in Gaza and continuation of the war affected the whole area, has affected many other societies, but we are near the fire. And the conflict there can lead to a conflict in the entire Middle East if it will not be managed. I'm not talking about finding solution. I'm talking about managing the crisis, freezing the crisis at least. The war must stop in Gaza. Otherwise, there are some countries in the area, they are misusing that. But if it will not stop, the fire would spread to other areas, and it started, as you have seen. Now, in Yemen and Red Sea is under threat. Iraq, a week ago, in Iraq, there was an attack, Iranian attack on Erbil. Of course, what the Iranian side said is baseless, but they attacked Erbil. There was an attack on Pakistan, and Pakistan reacted on it. So gradually, the fight is becoming wider in wider places and dangerous. The first step must be stopping the war in Gaza and sending humanitarian aid to the population in Gaza. The second step is at the end to address the roots of the issue. And I think roots of the issue is to address the right of self-determination for Palestinian people. Because even if you stop it now and repair the damages, but later on it will come back. So let's go to the roots of and I'm talking about the right of self-determination. At the end, the Palestinian people, they must decide. Of course, within the framework of the international law and international relationship. Which country can do that? I mean, now we are talking that stopping the war, and which country can have? Of course, in the first place, the Israelis can stop the war. But if the policy there is to continue this war, which country can affect them or put pressure on them? It is well known, the American and European, they can do this. It is important for Europe also to help people in the Middle East to have stable Middle East. Europe is facing a big challenge, and on European soil you have got a war. Imagine a war on the continuation of the war here in Europe, and starting a new war, wider war in the Middle East. What does it mean for us, all of us in the world? You have seen the inflation went high. You have seen the price of gas and oil went high. Shortages in some areas. Okay, the rich societies, rich countries, they can manage it. But what does it mean for poor societies in Africa? What does it mean for poor countries in Asia? Imagine if there will be a war around the Red Sea. And imagine if the war in Red Sea, the fire will reach the Gulf. What does it mean for oil? About 30 to 40% of the oil is coming from that area. So if there would be war in that area, and half of the oil products will disappear from the market, international market, imagine what happens to the economy. How are you going to face this inflation? What about the poor people? So the war in Ukraine, when it started, many people, they thought, okay, this is a regional. I said, no, this has got international dimension. Within few weeks, when the war started, Oil price went high. Okay, for oil price, for oil countries, it was good, and Iraq is an oil country. Our income, our budget is depending for about 90% on oil income. So when oil price is going down, then it's bad for the country. But now for 2 years, or more than 2 years, the oil price is high and is going higher because of the political situation, because of the tension, in fact, not because that there is lack of oil. It is political. The tension, the wars. And of course, when oil price is going high and gas prices also parallel with the oil price, then all products in the market the prices are going high. And this means big inflation. This creates problem in societies. A rich society, perhaps they can manage it, but poor societies, they cannot. And that will be also a new step for more wars and more wars. So it is our duty all, and then to find a solution. We formed a contact group, 5, 6 Arab ministers. My colleague, the Saudi minister, the Egyptian, the Jordanian, the Algerian, myself, we went to Moscow in the beginning of the war. And then we went to Warsaw to meet the Ukrainian foreign minister. So we tried, but we didn't succeed. But continuation of the war in Ukraine, it will affect not only Europe, it will affect the whole world as it affected. These were the topics, some topics, because I talked more than 20 minutes, Your Excellency. So I would like to thank you again, and thank you for listening. Thank you.
Minister, thank you for talking about Iraq and the region.
And the world.
And the world, finally. We agreed that it's possible to have a Q&A session, and
yes.
I will start with 1 or 2 questions, if I may, and then ask the audience. My own question concerns actually how you act in this Hamas war at the moment. Because your interest is in stability. And with the 7th of October, there seems to be a totally new situation, which can't be good for you as a country. And at the same time, you are affected. You said in Davos that Iran cannot strike Israel, that's why they struck Erbil. That was a strong statement.
So you followed my statement. Good.
That was a strong statement, I would say. And you have to find some sort of balance in the South African court case. You exposed yourself by supporting the South African case. At the same time, you have the situation with the US as a partner in the region. As I said, now an airbase has been attacked. There have been altogether, I think, hundreds of attacks since 7th October in Syria and in your country on US installations and the coalition force. So how do you see? Is it really a new situation after 7th October? You had negotiations with the US to withdraw possibly the troops they have in your country. It's not known whether between the Kurdish regional government and Baghdad there was always the same position on the issue of the Americans in your country. So was the 7th of October a real game changer, unfortunately also for your attempt to have stability in Iraq?
Thank you very much. Was it a game changer? Yes, the whole area change after 7 October. I'm not talking about what happened exactly during 7 October the day, because this is well known for everybody. But the Palestinian question was not born that day. It goes back. I'm talking about the international community. Did we address the Palestinian question or issue in the right way? I think no, we didn't. During the process of Oslo, Madrid, and then having Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and Gaza, and later on, of course, Hamas occupied Gaza and dismissed the Palestinian Authority. Was it the policy of the Israelis right in dealing with Palestinian Authority, especially Palestinian Authority in the West Bank? It was not right. Ignoring the Palestinian Authority, ignoring to deal with the Palestinian Authority. That led to different path. Hamas became stronger. And I'm not talking about how they were dealing with Hamas. Hamas at the end is a product. At the end they have got ideology. The ideology belongs to Muslim Brotherhood and this, but the activities and the situation of Hamas must be studied. Why Hamas reached that stage? Who did that?
You're talking about Israel and the Netanyahu government.
This is your conclusion. So, to deal with Palestinian issue, to approach the roots of the conflict, and the roots of the conflict has to do with the people, and they have the right of self-determination. If we can deal with that, I think there will be a different solution. But to ignore it, and to ignore the representative of the Palestinian and the government or the authority in West Bank, led to this situation, to be honest. How to deal with this? I think, once again, we must go back to deal with the roots and with the Palestinian Authority. At the end, Palestinian Authority is representing the Palestinian people. But leaving this issue just like that and for the time to solve it, it will not be solved. It will create a huge problem. Of course, what happened in Gaza and the fight in Gaza, the war in Gaza, affects the whole area. There are some elements, some leaders in the region, they want the continuation of the war for internal issues or personal. There are some countries, they wanted also the continuation, some countries in the region. So to stop these two approaches, which are dangerous, continuation of the war, it doesn't mean it will be limited. Continuation of the war, that means widening the area of the war. We have seen it. Continuation of the war, that means many other countries, governments, peoples will be part of this conflict. And the whole area will bear. That's why our policy is, of course, first we declared we are with the right of Palestinian people. Second, to stop in the first place the war, so that we can be able to stop the side effects of the war. We have got now side effects of this war, everywhere. The Iranian also, they are moving within this context. It is well known the Iranian has got problem with the America. not problem, they are in conflict with each other. The Iranians are in conflict with the Israelis. So we in Iraq became the victim of these conflicts. The tension between the United States and Tehran, we are paying the price. It reflects itself directly in our society. And the conflict in the area between Iran and Israelis and others, we became the victim. But really, the situation is dangerous. I think the European can play an important role. And I have the feeling that now today there will be a meeting in Brussels. The European policy is more rational now, and they are trying to find solution. But the American also started to understand that this war or continuation of this war, it will be also not in their interest. It will be against the interest of others. So if you are talking about interest, there isn't an alternative except to stop the war for the time being and then to think or rethink about the solution of the problems through dialogue and peaceful means.
So you are optimistic that both the European Union and the US will be ready to act as a force for the good because the situation escalated?
I think the public opinion in Europe, but also the election in the United States, these are all elements which can play a role, but at the end, everybody sees it. If the fight or the war will continue, it will be dangerous. It will be dangerous for the economy in the world. Imagine if there will be election and there will be a war in, let's say, Red Sea and Gulf countries. Then what does it mean for oil price? It will go to $500 for a barrel. It affects the American society. It affects European society. So it is your own interest, for your own interest to think about finding solution. Because we will see it. This war was limited, first in Gaza, now in Yemen, now in Red Sea, now in Pakistan, now in Iraq. So what does it mean? Of course this is dangerous.
You talked a lot about ending the war.
That's my job.
And the role of Israel. What is your feeling about the future of relations between Israel and Iraq?
No, we have got a law. That's me clear. I'm representing Iraqi government. There is a law in the parliament. The law in the parliament forbid normalization between Iraqi country, Iraq as a state, and Israel. This is clear.
We're talking about the future, when after the war and with a different Middle East.
I'm talking now. I'm committed to the parliament decision and committed to Iraqi law.
Thank you. I open for discussion. Actually, we have sitting here in the first row a group of students
That's nice.
who are preparing for a trip to Kurdistan, to Erbil, with our professor, because every year we send students to the Kurdish region, every year.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So please.
When are you going? March. It's nice weather there.
And Austrian Airlines is flying.
Again.
Again.
And
yes.
we are trying to have Austrian Airlines also to fly to Baghdad, so we discussed that. Yeah.
Very good. I have a question behind there, yes?
Thank you very much. My name is Önder. I'm actually a tourist here in Austria with my students from Turkey. It's an honor actually to be in your conference, and thank you, the Diplomatic Academy, for this talk. My question is about the antiquities that were stolen from Iraq in the time of war. Are you doing anything to bring them back, wherever they are, the historical objects that were stolen in the time of war?
We brought many back, thousands of them, from the United States, from other European countries. And just now I was in Davos. I had lengthy discussion with the Foreign Minister of Switzerland. Within a short time, I will go there and we will bring back more items. Thousands of these items has been stolen, unfortunately. But we, at the ministry, we developed a policy how to bring back these items. And until now, we succeeded. Thank you.
Thank you. President, yeah. You're one of our students from Syria.
Yes, hello. Thank
Hi,
you
how
for
are
your
you?
talk, Your
كيف
Excellency.
الحال؟
تمام ماشي الحال
هلا
نشكر
بيك.
الله هلا فيك. First of all, I would like to thank you for the courageous statements regarding the influence of corruption in Iraq. That's very brave, actually, to say it publicly. The question is, since 2020, there has been a lot of talks about asking the coalition forces to withdraw systematically from Iraq. And after the 7th of October, we've witnessed an increase of attacks and clashes between internal forces and these coalition forces. Now we know in many examples in the region when a power leave a country, the US is going to leave Iraq, that will create a vacuum. Is the Iraqi government ready to deal with the consequences of such withdrawal, knowing that Iraq is always under the influence of many regional players? Who is going to be the next power that will influence Iraq more? Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an important question. Thank you for your question. The Americans, they were in Iraq until 2011. And they left on the basis of an agreement with the American side, between the Iraqi government, of course, and Iraqi American administration. They had about 160,000 soldiers in Iraq. Of course, they were there after the change, 2003, changing the system. And they stayed until 2011. On the basis of that agreement, which I mentioned, they left. In 2014, ISIS terrorist organizations attacked Mosul, and it was June 2014, and they occupied Mosul. And within 2 months, they reached south of Erbil, but they reached also south of Baghdad. And the airport in Baghdad was under the threat of ISIS. So they reached Baghdad, in fact. 1/3 of the country territory was under the occupation of ISIS. Of course, part of the Iraqi army collapsed, and we started to fight. Popular mobilization has been formed, and Peshmerga were there, and part of the army still was in better shape, and we started to fight. But we couldn't fight this organization. It was an international organization. Thousands of people, terrorists, they were coming around the world, and they participated in the fight and building the so-called ISIS state. And they controlled about 50% for a while of the Syrian territory. They got weapons from Iraqi army, from Syrian army, and they controlled the banks in these areas, so they had money, and they started to trade in oil. Some oil fields were in their hands, and they were coming from around the world. So the coalition, in the first place, it was Iraq who invited the American side and the other two. So we invited them, and we thank them for being with us in this fight. Also, Iran was with us in fighting terrorism. So these countries has been invited. And now the Iraqi government wants to have dialogue and negotiation with them. Do we need you? Of course, we are thinking about Iraqi interests in the first place. If they were there for fighting ISIS, now ISIS as state disappeared. And ISIS, as a terrorist organization, they became very small, organization, and here and there are some cells. And the fight against ISIS now is not exactly a military fight. It is more intelligence security fight. If you collect information about them, in fact, we are taking the initiative and attacking them nowadays. If we will find a cell there, then we attack them. So we don't need such a, let's say, other armies to be there for the fight against ISIS. The question that you raised, in such an environment, political environment, security environment in the Middle East, and attacking Iraq from various countries, do we need alliance or not? The Iraqi government decided to open negotiation with the American side and with the alliance to talk about their withdrawal from Iraq. But there are some groups, they are thinking that through attacking them or through fighting them, they will leave. This is not right. It's not Iraqi policy. Because also when we talk to the American, they say, okay, we are ready to talk. We are ready. If you don't want us to be here, okay. We came because you invited us. And if you don't want us, we are going to leave. But let's arrange it. Let's have a plan of withdrawal. But if people are attacking us, we are not going to withdraw while we are under fire. We will withdraw when we will reach an agreement. And indeed, the Iraqi government is choosing this path, this process of negotiation. And we hope that within a short time we can start negotiation. And then talking about withdrawal. But at the same time, the American, they are repeating this point, saying that we are not even negotiating if we will be under fire. Because negotiating and being under the fire, that means we are going to the table of negotiation because of the pressure on us. No. But we desire to have talks with you, but in normal situation. So no attacks, then there will be talks. Thank you very much.
So that means the war against Hamas will also delay, presumably, the leaving of the coalition forces.
One of the reasons why those armed groups, are using the argument that because the war against Hamas and the war against the population in Gaza is by Israelis supported by United States. That's what they say. That's why if they will stop there, and then we will stop. They make a kind of linkage between these two issues. So this is the dilemma that we are facing.
Werner Fasel, former Minister of Defense, please.
Thank you.
First of all, I only can congratulate you to the achievements you have in the stabilization of your country. My question is a specific one to one of your bigger neighbors. What is your judgment on Turkish and especially Erdogan's position? On the one hand, excellent relations, traditional excellent relations between Ankara and Erbil. On the other hand, Turkish troops in the Kandil Mountains. Turkish role, or Erdogan's role, in Idlib, in Rojava, and of course also now in the Palestinian conflict. How do you see it?
You see, it is not up to me to evaluate and to talk about Turkish policy. I can talk about our relationship with Turkey and which stage is that. A few weeks ago, I led a big delegation to Ankara, about 35 people with me, most of them from security and aviation and security and intelligence and military sector. We had a very, very good and fruitful meetings in Ankara. My colleague was heading the other side with participation of the Minister of Defense, Intelligence Service leader, and other people. We put all these points, which has to do with both countries, on the table. And we decided to find out how we can deal with each point, each issue, where we can get together and help, where we can freeze some issues. And at the end, both sides, we decided to do a kind of research and present papers from both sides for the next meeting. Next meeting will be next month. So we are thinking together to find solution for some issues between both countries. Having said that, the relationship between Turkey and Iraq is very strong. And the trade ties and relationship is huge between Turkey and Iraq. There are hundreds of Turkish companies working inside Iraq. That's, by the way, it's the same with the Iranian. With the Iranian, we have got also huge trade relationships. So, unfortunately, because of the wars and destruction of the infrastructure, our society became as a consuming society. So we are importing almost everything from outside. And two main countries that we are dealing with is they are Iran and Turkey. So they have got big, great interest in Iraqi economy, both countries. And we are dealing with them. And of course, our two rivers, Tigris and Euphrates, are coming originally from Turkey. So we have got also our interest to have very good relationship with Turkish side, because our water is coming from there. And we have got only one pipeline, that's from Kurdistan region to Turkey. Nowadays, Iraq used to have, nowadays we have got only one pipeline. In the past, we had various pipelines. We had a pipeline going through Saudi Arabia. We had a pipeline in the old time through Lebanon, through Syria, and as well as through Turkey. But all these pipelines has been destroyed. So we have got only one pipeline, and that's going to Turkey, to Jihan port. So our relationship depends on many sides. It's not one-sided. It's not only security, it's others. We will try to focus on other fields so that we can manage this security issue. PKK are in Kandil Mountains. This is a fact. Neither the Iraqi Kurds nor the Iraqi government invited PKK to come there. During the uprising in 1991, and when the Iraqi, at that time also, when the Iraqi army collapsed in many areas, so many PKKs, they left the mountains in Turkey and they came to Iraqi Kurdistan and they stayed there. Nobody invited them, they are there. And of course, so I'm talking about 1991, and since then, they are in Qandil Mountain, and it is a remote area. And the other side of Qandil Mountain actually is exactly on the border with Iran. So they have got this freedom of movement. And they are well equipped. And of course, it is difficult for Iraqi army, but also for Peshmerga besides that, we don't believe in fights. We don't believe in wars. To attack these groups. And the Iraqi constitutions oblige us to be clear about that. Because in our constitution, there is an article which says that the Iraqi soil must not be used by any group in attacking our neighboring countries or other countries. So it is our duty also not to allow other groups to attack Turkey or Iran. We reached an agreement with the Iranian side, security agreement. There were some political parties, Iranian political parties. They were there, some of them from 1970, the others from 1980s. But on the basis of that agreement, now they are in refugee camps, and they left their areas and they left their weapons. I don't know if we can do the same with, the same agreement which we had, although we agreed with the Iranians, still they are bombing us. I don't know if we can do it with the Turkish side, but however, the process of negotiation started with Turkish side, and we hope we can reach a kind of formula that will solve these kinds of problems. We want to have good relationship with our neighboring countries, both with Iran and with Turkey. But of course, relationship is for love cannot be from one side. It needs two sides.
Minister, you have so many big neighbors, so big players around you. Ambassador, please.
Aha. Thank you for being here.
Another big player.
Since you mentioned Pakistan, I just wanted to give clarity to that incident which happened. So just for the general public, that we have been able to agree with Iran that we will revert back to normalization of relationship. Because if you recall, our ambassadors were recalled from both countries.
I know.
So now we are back on the track, and the agreement is to understand the issue and resolve it through diplomatic channels. We cannot afford to expand the conflict, and especially when Pakistan having a difficult relationship with the eastern borders, India, Afghanistan. So we cannot add any other variable to our security calculus. That's the understanding. So we hope that this relationship will be, because we share 900 kilometers border and we have bilateral trade. So that is a solution that what you suggested, that diplomacy and dialogue is the way forward for Gaza conflict. And I agree with your reading that Gaza conflict did not start on 7th October. It has a history of 7 decades. So the international community ignored that history, and now we are in the situation. And I'm also glad you mentioned the right of self-determination, which is, I think, international community has forgotten, which is an important fundamental principle of the UN Charter, and which should be allowed to the Palestinians, and as well as other people under foreign occupation like Kashmir. So thank you for bringing it to the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for being here. And I was really worried when attacks happened and and reaction from your side. So I am happy that now, once again, you chose negotiation and dialogue with your neighbor, Iran, and we hope that the Iranians also are going to do with us the same. We are not against Iran. We are not an enemy of Iranian. In fact, we were good friend of Iranian, and we were trying to help the Iranian. But when they attack, we are obliged to answer. We didn't answer with rockets. We answered with diplomacy. We answered by talking. And still they are angry. But I respect your position.
Also a message to others that they will not keep silent if anything happens like that from any side.
Mm-hmm. Pakistan is an important country. I have been in your country twice. So it is very important and good friend of Iraq.
I have two more questions here in the second row. Students from the DA.
Hello, my name is Mariam Sindi. I'm a Kurdish student studying here at the
Sindi?
Diplomatic Academy. Yes, from Zaho.
So from Zaho.
Yes.
Huh?
Your Excellency, in the past few years, you played a crucial role in bringing Iran and Saudi together, successfully calming down a lot of tensions in the region. But with the recent developments in mind, how do you see Iraq's role as a mediator changing, if at all?
Changing,
if at all.
Is your role as a mediator changing because of what's happening at the moment in the region?
No, now, of course, it is difficult to mediate. Besides that, to be honest, I'm saying now, when we were in Davos, my colleague Prince Faisal, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Saudi's Minister of Foreign Affairs. So he told me about that. He's going to meet Abdullahian. I had an appointment with Abdullahian. Abdullahian is a good friend of mine. But because of the circumstances, of course, I couldn't meet him. So then the Saudi's minister started to mediate between them, while in the past I was between both of them. So I said, okay, if once Abdullahian and myself will agree, then we are going to China to announce that. Not it is difficult now. We need, of course, a different policy in Iran towards us. Their internal policy, what they are doing is their own business. We are not intervening. But it must be clear. Iran has got strong relationship with the Iraqi government, with almost all political parties. So if they have got a problem somewhere, they have got all ways, all means to talk. But if they talk with us through missiles, through rockets, okay, at the end, we cannot stop and say nothing. In 2022, right, when they attacked once again Erbil, I went there also with a delegation. And I told them, I'm not going to Security Council because we can solve it together. But this time, I didn't have an alternative. The Prime Minister, myself, we agreed. We did everything together, by the way, so people must know that. The Prime Minister and myself, we agreed to go to the Security Council. Of course we will do that, to defend our country, to defend our people. And they must not talk about these, what they call it, they are talking about different kind of bases, Mossad bases in Erbil. They killed a family, Kurdish family, children. And still they are repeating this story. Nobody is believing that. So we will wait until, but still, we want to have peace and stability in the area. And if we can play a role, we will do it again. Because that's our our approach. That's our target, to help countries to come together. And by the way, we did this also on the basis of Iraqi interest, because we have seen it when we studied our political system, our political situation. We have seen the regional dimension in our internal politics, the effect of Iranian in our internal politics, the effect of Gulf countries in our internal politics, the American in our. So when we were trying to manage it internally, but we reached a belief that to solve these problems, we must deal with it outside the border. So less tension between the Gulf countries and Iran, that means less tension within Iraqi society. Less tension between the American and the Iranian, that means less tension between the political parties in our parliament. So we did it also on the basis of our interests, and we are ready to continue this role, to help the Iranian and to help other countries to come together. Thank you.
There is one more question, second row here.
Where are you from?
Okay. Hello, I'm Mansoor. I'm born in Afghanistan and raised in Pakistan, and also lived for a couple of months in Iran. تشکر شما خوبید.
سلامت باش.
زنده باشین. I have two questions. The first question is, you mentioned that now the EU is acting, the US is starting to act in regard of the conflict in Gaza. But I wanted to ask what is, because we see, or we saw the efforts in the Arab League, and it was a failure in a way, because there was very different positions by all these big powers or major powers in the region. Is there anything to expect that when also this shift is happening in the EU policy, in the US policy, is there any expectation that some concerted efforts or a unified position would emerge from the Arab League at least? And is there any focus also there to not look only to this, to the major players, but also within the region itself? And the second question regarding the recent attacks from Iran, it's actually these all attacks in Pakistan, in Erbil, and also the retaliation from Pakistan within Iran. The common factor here is that in all these attacks, actually, on the attacks between Iran and Pakistan, the Baluchs were targeted, and in the attack Erbil, the Kurds were attacked. So these both ethnic groups are actually the most oppressed groups in the region. What it means when such attacks happens just in a showcase of power, and what are the implications of that for the internal security and also in the broader sense in the regional security in the region?
The second part of the question is difficult for me to answer. The first part, about Arab League. Arab League, they were united as for supporting the Palestinian, and okay, there are some differences between the countries, but in general, I think all Arab countries, they don't want this war. They declared that the war must stop. They declared that humanitarian aid must be there. They declared that the doors must be open for Gaza people so that they can receive these things. But almost all Arab countries, they are talking also about the roots of the conflict. At the end, they want solution. And most of the Arab countries, or almost all, they are talking about two-state solution. So there is a position is not so far away from each other among the Arab countries. I hope that the European, they started to change their policy. So if you follow the European countries or governments' policy, you have seen it. Step by step, they changed their policy. If you go to, for example, if you take the French government, the German government, the Dutch government, there is a big change when the conflict started, 7 October and now. And I have the feeling now, with the meeting today, I think it's today or tomorrow, And then the next meeting in New York, Security Council, that's tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. There will be a shift in the policy. But this shift in the policy among the European Union countries and will lead to stop the war, that I don't know, but I'm sure this will increase the pressure on the Israeli government so that they can stop the war. Because continuation of the war, what does it mean? Already Gaza has been destroyed. So what? What is the target? What do you want? This is the main question. But to stop the war is the first step. And I think the Europeans are going to participate in this process. It is a different approach nowadays than comparing with in the beginning, 100 days ago, right? And as I mentioned for the attacks between Pakistan and Iran, the important thing is violation of the sovereignty of the country. So attacked this area or that, but when sovereignty of the country will be violated, of course, then there will be a reaction. We chose diplomatic path, and we believe in diplomatic path. But in principle, there must not be an attack on a friendly country or on an alliance. Because people, they don't understand why. I know why, and I talked about that, but now is enough. There must not be an attack on neighboring countries.
These are very clear words. And I hope you are right in saying that the US and EU pressure will lead to a change of thinking as far as the war is concerned and stop this war.
Otherwise, be sure, this war will be widened and the whole area will be under fire. So that's the risk. Okay, either stop it or we will have a war everywhere.
But Minister, you know,
attacks everywhere.
Possibly stopping the war is the easier part of the situation. It's much more difficult to get to a solution afterwards. What happens afterwards?
Okay, so first stop the war, and then you can talk. But continuation of the war will need to leave any opportunity for talks, for negotiation. But stopping the war is the first place. You cannot have war and talks. It will be difficult.
Yes, you know that there's a lot of pressure already built by the European side more than weeks ago, and a lot from the US side. But the Israel government still has this position that we have to destroy the construction of Hamas. And it's getting more and more unrealistic, as we also know. A Hamas leader was just in a meeting in Turkey, but also in other places. So I guess the rationality is on the side of your position, as far as Europe is concerned and the US is concerned. About the Netanyahu government, I'm the moderator here. I'm not saying anything on this. But you know that the Austrian position, the European position, is all in favor of this, but at the same time saying that terrorist organizations should not be allowed to determine the future of the Middle East. And I think that on that we could both agree. But the way forward, hopefully, is one that follows the example also of your country, looking for a stable situation, looking for a constitution, working towards democracy, as you explained at the very beginning, and looking for good relationship with your neighbors. Syria would be another example of a neighbor where it's very important to get stability. But I do have to say that it was great to have you here.
Thank you.
For such a discussion. because it's not usual to have a frank dialogue with a general public on these issues.
This is very difficult.
And it's good that you accepted our offer to be such a place here. Please give a round of applause to our speaker.